This is literally 2 seconds later after my previous video, and I'm gonna go onto my phone now and look at my comments to see what people are saying. Is my tea super hot? Yeah, it's super hot. So I'm going to okay. Okie dokie. Tea time. And I want a little sweet. My tea might still be too hot, but we'll play it by ear here. Getting to my comment section. This is on my piracy video. Okay. AKR4MEL763 on my piracy video says, sometimes piracy feels like the only way to access stuff that either costs way too much or just isn't available where you live. Like, imagine a student who can barely afford rent and all the tools, movies, or games that they want are locked behind huge paywalls. Meanwhile, big companies make billions and don't really lose anything when one person downloads a movie. Plus, some stuff is literally impossible to get legally in certain countries. So what are the people supposed to do? Wait forever or just miss out? Piracy kind of feels like sticking it to greedy corporations and making things a bit more fair, especially when they overcharge or region lock everything. More to that, streaming companies low-key screw over directors and creators way more than people think. Like, a movie drops on a streaming platform, it gets millions of views, it becomes super popular, but the people who actually made it barely see any of that money. Directors used to get proper cuts from theater releases or DVD sales, but now with streaming, it's all lumped into vague contracts and like flat fees. So the big platforms rake in the cash, while the creators get crumbs. And the worst part, the companies don't even share viewing numbers half the time, so directors can't even prove how successful their work really was. It's messed up. Streaming makes things easier for us, sure, but it also lets these platforms quietly steal credit and money from people who actually put in the work. And I totally agree with you. I agree with everything you say. And I had a conversation with my friend a day after I made this video, and he said something very similar. He said, well, I asked him if he thought piracy was wrong. Hold on. Oh, that's hot. I just burnt my mouth. Oh, Jesus. Okay. That sucks. I asked him if he thought piracy was wrong, and he said it depends. Because if you're stealing from like a small mom and pop shop, yes, I'd say that's very wrong and you shouldn't do that. But if it's some big greedy corporation that's raking in billions of dollars every year, I don't think it's so bad as a thing. Even though I wouldn't steal from a store physically, I do see the justification in doing that, even though it is like morally wrong to some degree. Okay. And then 1010 in the World, who was also in my comment section, saying that it's a criminal act, and yes, it is a criminal act, but people make up their own moralities about things, and like, I think people get too caught up in legalities. Like, you go through specific stages of development as a person, and one of those stages is really adhering to legislation and that sort of thing. But the next step in development as a person is adhering to your own moral frameworks. And so I'd like to think that as a person I've reached that stage of like not really caring about what the law says, but caring but caring about what I believe to be good in my heart. So yes, you could be a criminal, but you can also be a good person. I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. So if you call me a criminal, it doesn't really affect me as much as you might think. It doesn't really make me feel bad, because a lot of criminals are good people. That's okay. These candies are really annoying. Anyway. Oh, 1010 World says, yes, there are some pretty shady and greedy companies, and we need to fight for some regulation over these bulldogs and even transparency in the supply chain, and ... not steal. If you get flagged as a criminal, the future won't get easier for you. And I don't really care about that. You know? My future will be my future, and that's sort of how I want it to be. I think piracy aligns with my morality as a person, to some degree. Or maybe not my morality, but it aligns with who I am. You know, what makes me me. And so if that affects me in the future, it's going to make my future more like how I want it to be. It makes my future more in line with what the consequences are for my own actions, and that's fine with me, because it's my future. And who really cares about having an easy future? If anything, I want my future to be harder, have more struggles to go through, develop more as a person. And maybe those hardships will maybe change my mind about these things. Because it's really human nature to not learn so effectively through people telling you this is bad and shaking their finger, but actually doing these things and suffering the consequences of doing so. And for me personally, I don't think there will ever be many consequences for doing something that I feel aligns with me as a person. Like, nobody really gets in trouble for these things. And yes, there's a potential for me getting in trouble, but I don't really care. And so 1010 World says this, and then the original commenter that I mentioned replies to that and says, 1010 World, I am not stealing anything. I'm just a viewer. I am not a hacker. Even hackers who do that stuff, I see them as heroes because they make me enjoy something for free. And I can see where both of these people are coming from. I'll just call you AK from now on, and then 1010 World. AK, yes, you do get things for free, but like, that's not the point. You can get millions of dollars for free if you like scam other people's bank accounts. And a lot of scammers, what they do is they, like Punch Made Dev, I was watching a documentary on him. He's a notorious scammer who, his main source of income is just draining people's bank accounts. And the way he justifies it to himself is that the bank companies, well, all the banks, this is a risk they're willing to incur, and they will reimburse the person who got scammed from the money that they lost. And so it's in Punch Made Dev's world, it seems like a win-win. He gets the money, and the person also doesn't lose anything because they get reimbursed. And he's basically scamming the bank as he sees it, and that's how he sleeps at night. But that's not, and this is sort of the idea or like mindset that you're sticking it to the person, like the greedy corporations. You're sticking it to the banks, and you're scamming the banks because they make too much money anyway. But you're still harming like real people in the process of doing that, potentially. there's a bit of a removal, like a distance between the person having no money in their account and getting it reimbursed. In that period before they get reimbursed, they're probably going to suffer as a result of that. So it's not so clear cut. With piracy, it's more like you're making a copy of something to negate any a realized gain from the creator that made it. And that doesn't feel as bad. You know? So it's not just about free stuff, AK. It's about like doing what is morally right and avoiding sin. And that's sort of a view that you can take on, but you can also take on the view which I'd personally take on, which is everybody needs vices. Everybody is imperfect in some way. And it's better to choose your vices than have your vices choose you. Like, I choose to pirate. I choose to have the vices that I have. But if you're overcome with your vices and they control your behavior, I think that starts to become a problem. So it's not like you can get rid of sin entirely from your life. It's a balance. You know, you need to recognize when things are too far. And yes, it's important to live in accordance with good, moral, virtuous things as much as possible. Though I don't think that's entirely possible, like 100% possible. A lot of people who put up the appearance that they do live 100% purely are usually just doing that. They're putting up an appearance, and they're not actually that way in real life. You can see this in the churches now. You can see the priests and how the rates of a topic that I don't want to talk about on YouTube are so high. It's because these people are so sinful as people that they choose to go into something that they think will purify them, or put up the appearance that they're a pure person, because it sits in the back of their conscience, because they know they're a sinner and they're a bad person. And I don't have anything that consumes me like that, so I don't feel super bad about, you know, pirating something here or there. And yes, it's there are some things that are unhealthy for you, but again, I will bring up the concept of yin and yang, where those things are there to complement the good sides to you. And I don't think you can really have one without the other without really losing your mind in the process. That's a view that I hold. I don't know if it's a common one, and I don't know if it's factual, but it's how I justify things to myself. Yeah, so that's what I have for this video. Thank you for watching again. Those were great comments. Thank you for taking the time to leave them, because it really makes me think, you know? I don't really think about these moral issues as often as I should, and I think being exposed to other people commenting and sharing their own thoughts has made me more apt to really explore these ideas and solidify my own ideas in my head about, you know, morality and that sort of thing. So thank you. Anyway, I'm gonna have some breakfast and finish my tea. Bye-bye.